Hey everyone, Josh here. So today we're back at the Touareg and we're doing a rear wheel bearing. So this thing's been noisy for quite a while and it's starting to kind of get loose, so I'm getting a little afraid it's gonna fall off, especially hauling a trailer all the time. So I tried a couple weeks ago and things really did not go well. I ran into a pile of it. So anyways, so I've got all my parts ordered that I think I need, so now we're gonna give this another shot. So I'm hoping I can do this without a press. I do have a welder and a grinder if I need them. I'm not sure how that's gonna work yet. A few odds and ends. You're gonna need your 32 mil 12-point socket. 1.25" works really well. Another issue is that nut is torqued to 500 Newton meters. So if you are in Canada, I guess, and you only use parts of the metric system, that is 324 foot-pounds, 325, something like that. So my impact, for whatever reason, couldn't get that loose. So a bit of rust and stuff. So I needed to get a big bar to get that broken free, but you also need to get that retightened to that. So just keep that in mind. You need to get that torqued back up when you're done. And then yeah, fighting a bunch of rust issues. So everything's been soaking for a bit, so I'm hoping it comes apart without the need of a torch. So with the brakes off, these the caliper retaining bolts, which are triple squares, 16 millimeter. They're freaking tight and rusty. So once I got those cracked loose, got that off. Next up was getting the rotor off, which you've got that retaining bolt, which of course nobody put anti-seize on. So once that's off, the rotor should come off, not too bad, but my parking brakes had seen better days and they were binding up. So before I take this emergency drum stuff apart, just get a quick video of how everything sits. So on the rear, you've got your adjuster that's probably seized, this one spring here. The front, you've got that spring there along with the actual actuator, and then these two rusty pins here should hold the shoes through that hole that rotted out and that hole there that rotted out, so it should sit right about there. So that should help on reassembly. So I'll just do a quick recap of what the plan here is. So I can't push the CV shaft in far enough to be able to do it on car. So this knuckle's got to come off. So you've got a million control arms attached to this knuckle. This is pressed into that bearing, so you're gonna have to use something, ideally a Y puller, but this homemade T-bar puller is probably gonna go like that and push that in. Once that's at least moved in, it won't go all the way through. You'll know when it stops. We're gonna get everything unbolted. I've got a few issues, so that sway bar link isn't sway barring anymore. This e-brake cable needs to come out. Of course, it's seized in there, so that's getting cut off. So I know this will move because I had it moving before. So I guess I'm just hoping everything else breaks free. Okay, so we got it off here. So now I gotta figure out how to get the spindle, or whatever you want to call it, out of there. So that'll be a press fit into the bearing here. So kind of look at it and we'll figure something out here yet. Okay, so this is looking a little sketchy, but I got a 2-jaw puller, the axle nut, my socket, and then a whole brake pad jammed in there. And then the 2-jaw puller on there. This one's just a little sketchy. It's by the ABS sensor. I really don't want to break that off, but I think we'll give it a go and see what happens. Okay, so it did not budge using the puller. So I'm gonna give up here. It slipped once and grabbed onto here, didn't break it, but I really don't want to do that sensor too. So I'm going to take this out to the farm and I guess use a press to get that out. I might still have to cut the bearings off yet. I'm not too sure on that. So I guess got to grab my bearing. Grab that. And maybe some miscellaneous sockets to do some pressing, and let's see what happens. Okay, this seems like a bit of a ticking time bomb, so I'm just going to keep it quick. Pressing off of the e-brake shoe pad there. I put a screw into the dust shield holder there, and then just kind of teed it across. And then as far as the back side, I've got a chain wrapped around the top, so I gotta say that's a first for me. But it seems to be going, so I'm going to do this off camera and get it popped out. Okay, so I might not have done a very good job explaining what was going on here. So you basically need to support this knuckle somehow and press your spindle out. The issue, as you can see, is the spindle can't fit through the frame on this press. It's a fairly small press. So you got to kind of hold it up so it's got somewhere to go, and then the main thing is it's just going to pop the one half of the bearing race out. So that's going to be another issue. It's getting this chunk of bearing race off. And the other issue is getting this remaining piece of the bearing out. So we've got a snap ring there, so that's why that bearing stayed there. So I have a feeling I'm going to take this apart, like take the snap ring off, and then put it right back in how it was and press this remaining piece of the bearing out. Okay, so you can see the race is kind of getting marred up. That one's really not good. So that'll be where the noise and looseness comes from. So now we'll get this cut off here. So as far as getting this remaining piece of the bearing off, you can get knife edge pullers. So it's basically like a half moon there, from there, and then you basically tighten it together, and then it's got a T-bar puller to push on there. You get them pretty cheap on Amazon. Another option is taking a zip disc, cutting a nice little slice in it, and then take your punch, a big hammer, and it cracks. So now that kind of releases the tension. It's no longer pressed tight on the shaft. It's now opened up a bit. You just kind of tap it off and slide it off. So we'll get that cleaned up. We'll get the housing over there cleaned up, and then yeah, back together. So in case yours comes out bad, the steel side goes to the hub. Rubber seal side goes in first up against the sensor, so like that. So we'll tap that in and then we'll put it in the press and press it in the rest of the way. All right, so this is Josh from the future here. We're back at the house, bearings everything's assembled. I just want to talk about a few things before we jump back at the farm and press this bearing in. There's only a certain way to go in, and I had to get clarification to make sure I put it in the right way. So I'll talk about that here in a minute. The other thing you want to make sure, so I had the bearing in the freezer so that it would go in here a bit easier. So you're going to want to make sure when you're pressing it into your spindle, I guess you'd call this, make sure you're pressing on the very outside ring of the bearing. Press it in, and then don't forget the snap ring in here. Make sure you put that back on. So once that's in there, you can put your hub back in. Like, it's got to get pressed in as well. So that's got to go in that way. You need to make sure you're supporting this inner bearing race. What I used was that little chunk that I cut off of the spindle, the old one. It sits in here nice, and put a couple spacers, and then you can press against that. If you don't support this and you just press against the cast or whatever, you're going to push this half out, and then your new bearing is going to be wrecked. So make sure that's very important that you're supporting that, because it goes in quite tight. Okay, so day's turned into night pretty quick. I gotta get this together so I can get to work tomorrow. But I got the bottom control arm on, the airbag bolt hammered through. Just got like a million other bolts for all these control arms that go every which way. One other thing was my sway bar link. I hit it with my pry bar and it fell off, but that was worn for quite a while, so I got a nice new one. And as I kind of guessed, all this hardware is technically one-time use, so either get all new hardware or just use common sense. No using impacts or channel locks, and torque everything in Newton meters. So it is what it is. I'm just gonna use common sense, I guess, and hopefully the wheel doesn't fall off. So I'll get this controller or this sway bar link on. Might save this for another day, and then just get all these bolts jammed back in and we'll carry on. So I ended up getting those changed out. Everything's sitting in here loose, so the plan is kind of get it sitting roughly ride height and then tighten out all these bolts up, so that way these bushings aren't tweaked one way or the other. If you tighten them with a full droop down at normal ride height, they're going to be tweaked all the way one way, and you're probably going to shorten the life of everything. So it's just yeah, I don't know, I just about level for the back arms there. So we'll tighten everything up, and then I'll put these old rotors and pads back on, and then we'll save the e-brake cable that I had to cut and the parking shoes and all that for another video. I don't have time tonight to do that, so I'll worry about that at another time. There, so it's all back together. It's not exactly torqued, but it's tight. I'll check it tomorrow with a 3/4 inch drive torque wrench. So yeah, so that's the end of this video. Hopefully it helped, and the next ones will be doing the e-brake cables and doing the full refresh on their back brakes, as I need the parking brakes now, and rotors and pads and all that good stuff. So stay tuned for those, and yeah, thanks for watching.